The RTE Rugby Podcast, sponsored by Canterbury. See the new Irish men and women's rugby jerseys at canterbury.com.
Andy Farrell, welcome to the RTE Rugby Podcast ahead of the opening round of the Six Nations Championship, where we're very excited at the prospect of what looks on paper like probably one of the most competitive championships in quite some time. Delighted to have Birch, Jackman and Sean Holley with us as well to give us the Welsh perspective. Sean, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. Nice to see you both, Bernard.
Yeah, great to have you. Sean. And obviously, Welsh, Bernard, you can give us your Welsh perspective too as well. I mean, it's not that long ago since you were over the Dragons, and we have a few Dragons to talk about. But look, just before we get into it, Birch, huge amount of excitement, certainly in Ireland. I'm not going to speak for Wales. We'll get Sean's view in a second. Around the start of this championship, after the November internationals, that Ireland can be hugely competitive and actually have a real chance to go and win this title. Would you concur with that?
Yeah, look, we have it. Yeah, we're going into it in good form based on what we saw in November. The provinces have done well, but it's a different competition. When we look back at it, New Zealand were fatigued, Argentina were out in their feet, and Japan, Japan maybe lacked a little bit of game time since the World Cup. So I think this is the litmus test, and people writing off Wales. I mean, I think it's definitely foolhardy and arrogant. I think we'll know a lot more about where we are, after this game on Saturday. And I think we're in good. As I said, we're in good place, but anything can happen in the Six Nations.
Yeah, well, Sean, Byrne would tell you I'm one of the most foolhardy and arrogant people he's ever met in his life. So Wales have absolutely no chance this weekend. What do you reckon about that?
Yeah, well, that's the way we like it, Hugh. I think we were all saying that this time last year, weren't we? And we ended up nearly winning the Grand Slam against all the odds. But no, in all reality, you look at the Welsh squad and it's shorn of experience. Some might say, me included, that's a good thing because we're not far away from France 2023, and Wayne Pivak needs to start looking at some alternatives. We can't go relying on Alan Wynne-Jones and Jonathan Davis for the rest of our days, even the likes of Liam Williams and Justin Tipuric. So, it's good from our point of view. Where we are, regions aren't functioning that well. We had a bit of a spike last weekend, albeit, narrow wins over Leinster seconds and, Dragons drawing with Benetton. Ospreys had a good win, but largely our form in Europe and the URC hasn't been great. But we still will be competitive. Bernard will know we're a tough bunch to beat. We always prove in campaigns, and we grow in tournaments. We were aided by a couple of red cards last year. We have to admit that. But
you had more red cards last year, I think, than Ireland have had in the last 40 years.
I know, mate. I know. But look, for what it's worth, I've tipped Ireland. So hopefully that'll put a real dampener on it for you.
You've done that just to put the markers on us this weekend. Okay, well, look, we'll get back into the Wales team in a bit. But Bernard, just on the overall question, and again, like, you're well placed to comment on this. What always, I guess, it's a bit of a head scratcher for the Irish in respect is that the sum of the parts when they come from Wales come together to perform on the pitch. Like, they just have this unbelievable belief in what they're doing in the countries that they're playing for and in the fan base that they are representing as well. And, was summed up last year as well by the fact that they won the championship. Can they do it again this year, despite the absentees? You mentioned Ken Owens, Alan Wynne-Jones, a lot of big name players, George North not there. Do you believe that there is still that ability to turn it on and come together as a unit?
Yeah, they still have some very good players. I mean, Williams at 9, Bigger obviously being captain. Luce Rees-Salmon is a match winner. Josh Adams at 13, that's going to be really interesting. Obviously, he's a top end winger. I think maybe the front five is an area of concern for them. And in this competition, looking at what France, England, and even Scotland, they've beefed up their pack in a big way. I think the Irish pack, as good as Irish pack as I've ever seen in terms of power of ball players. So that's the area of concern for Wales. And they still have, I love Basham. I know him well, Ellis Jenkins, Wainwright. So even though they're missing, Faletau and Tipuric, they're very strong in the back row. I just wonder, as a collective unit, is that front five is going to be able to get them enough ball. But maybe they will. Maybe they'll come out and for the Welsh, I think they bounce off big crowds as well. And I think maybe that's probably something that they don't obviously get that much in regional rugby. And when they go and put on a Welsh jersey and they play in the Principality or they play in the Viva, they get an emotional charge, which all teams get. But I think it's a bigger difference for the Welsh players. They're not playing in the knockout stage of Europe, not really regularly knockout stages of the URC. So I think they don't have to go to the well as often, but they have a track record of success at international level, and I think Payback and Bigger will be using that this week to try and say, look at, we're the champions. Historically in this competition, we've been able to beat anybody, and try and get that mindset right and get that confidence maybe that you wouldn't think they would get based on what they've been doing for the regions.
Yeah, and it's very easy to see that as well. For anyone who's been around Cardiff, I guess on those big match days, Sean, you get the sense of a buzz and anticipation as well among the crowd that are there about Wales, no matter what team is picked, and I again, equally this weekend, I have been reading some of the commentary over here. I know some of it has been posted on a few different Welsh media outlets about interviews on radio that suggest that Ireland are going to win comfortably this weekend, or maybe newspaper articles. And I'm saying to myself, do we not learn any lessons from this crap? Just to temper expectations, we're feeding into the Welsh hand here. Stop doing this.
I read Rob Kearney's as comfortable win for Ireland, isn't it? But at the end of the day, if you sat in Rob Kearney's seat, even your average Welsh fan or Irish fan, he's probably right. We sit here now, and the form of the Irish provinces, the depth of the squad, the form in November, the win against the All Blacks, what Wales have been showing in the regions, then that is the sensible thing to say. But as Bernard said, that all goes out the window when it comes to a Six Nations, and it's almost a perfect fixture for Wales. Had we had Italy at home or Scotland at home first up, I'd be really, really nervous. Expectations are really low on this Welsh side going to Ireland because of what I've just said. And, that plays into their hand. It plays into Dan Biggar's hands. It plays into Wayne Pivac's and John Humphreys and Stephen Jones, because they are now behind closed doors reading Rob Kearney's messages to them and saying, look, we got World Cup positions up for grabs. There are big name players to come back. Here's your shop window. Here's your chance. And on our day, a lot of those young players can perform, like Ting Basham. Recently, we've seen Adam Beard come through, who's been excellent, but there's points to prove. Ryan Elias, there's still question marks over him. People like Seb Davis on the bench. A lot of people are thinking, wow. And even Ting Basham, as good as he was in the autumn, now this is a different kettle of fish, different time of year. We're on sync with the rest of the teams. Can he do it? So, it's exciting for us, as I said, because I think it's almost like a free hit for the Welsh team and Welsh fans, because we got our excuses ready.
Yeah, exactly. And just, Wayne Pivak as well. I remember last year's November International, before last year's Six Nations, so I'm going back 2 Novembers ago. And Pivak was under serious pressure. I mean, some of the results have been a shambles. Into November, that form carried through. And I remember reading a lot of things saying, look, have we made a mistake by appointing this guy? Lo and behold, he goes out and wins the Six Nations. He probably has about 5 years grace to continue in the job on the back of that. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting that he was able to get the squad to turn it around in a very short window of time, from the Novembers in the summer into the Six Nations. So clearly he is a very good coach.
Well, I think he's got a good coaching team. That's what he's got, Okay. And you've got John Humphreys, Neil Jenkins, Gethin Jenkins, Stephen Jones, all former Wales captains. They've been there and done it. They've won major trophies, and I think that's it. I think Wayne is more, sort of the conduit between the board but he still has to the moment. And that transition from the autumn to the win last year, of course, was aided by Ken Owens, Alan Wynne-Jones, Jonathan Davis, and so on. They don't have those now. So there's a huge responsibility on Dan Biggar, Liam Williams, even people like Wynne Jones now being on a British and Irish Lions tour. Adam Beard came through, immensely. It's just going to be interesting to see their test of character, because I would imagine what I'm expecting is that, Ireland are chomping at the bit. They've got points to prove against Wales. They've got points to prove in this championship, and they should be ready. The expectations on them. Can they cope with that? It's one thing beating the All Blacks, where they probably fancied that one, as amazing as that is to say.
Yeah.
Now, when you got, idiots like me and other pundits saying, if Ireland, they should win Saturday. If they can go off the back of that and sneak a win in France, it's on. And that's what I'm thinking. And that's what I almost would like to see.
Yeah. And typically we have not responded well to pressure in the past when we have, had this kind of favourite tag about us. This is Andy Farrell, who hot off the press. And he literally is giving his press comments as we are recording, talking to Neil Tracy and Michael Corcoran today about some of the selection decisions and the game against Wales this weekend. Have a listen.
Can you talk about initially the selection of Mac Hansen and what you've seen from him over the course of his relatively short career within Ireland and indeed in training camp in the last couple of weeks?
He's a smart rugby player. He makes things happen. He knows how to get himself involved in the game. He's got great feel. He's got a good skill set across the board. And it's tough when you first go into international camps, but the ones who do it best and hit the ground running and, you know, end up getting to a good few caps straight away, they're the guys that are able to be told once or maybe twice and pick things up straight away, and Mac's certainly done that.
And in terms of the others that you've selected within that back division, there's obviously no Robbie Henshaw and Keith Earls are not there. Can you just clarify, are they fully fit or are they fit, or what's the story there?
Earlsy isn't fit for this weekend. He had a hamstring strain yesterday and he's going for a scan today, so we'll know more about that later on today. But he's out, and Robbie had a little bit of a niggle on an adductor towards the end of last week. A good few days of rehab has got him back up to speed again, so he missed a couple of sessions there, and that allowed the other three guys to get through their work. So Robbie's fine, but the rehab has done him good, so Bundy and Ringer get to start.
And just another question, if you don't mind, just your impressions of Wales and the Welsh team that's been selected.
Well, it's a good side. I mean, you look at the back line. There's danger all over, isn't there? You know, so you know they talk about the people that they've not got. I suppose the people that have got the opportunity this week they will add to the depth, I'm sure, by performing like they always do when they put a red jersey on.
Aside from the couple of injuries you mentioned there, like if you were to compare your team this time round to what you were putting out early in November, it's largely similar. How pleasing is it that you've been able to have that continuity going from one camp into the other, where in previous campaigns you probably were having to chop and change your team and not due to injuries?
Yeah, no, it's great. Camp was fantastic. We certainly prepared very well, and there's a reason for that, because of exactly what you've just explained. You know, continuity, etc. People coming into camp and hitting the ground running. So very happy with how things have gone so far. We keep on building for the rest of the week and ready to perform on Saturday.
James Hume, as well as in the 23 shirt, he was very honest after November about the tough conversations you would have had with him about what you wanted to see from him over the next couple of months. How impressed have you been with his form over the last 8-12 weeks?
The same as everyone else. Very impressed. He's certainly buckled down and gone away from the autumn series and put his best foot forward, hasn't he, to get back into the room for the Six Nations. And yeah, you can see, I mean, he's the type of guy as well, obviously involved in the autumn, and then things are a little bit fresher for him coming back in. You know, there's not a massive break, is there, between the autumn and the Six Nations, etc. So his knowledge of how to get up to speed, you know, for somebody who's very young as far as international experience has helped him massively, certainly in the first 10 days of training.
Okay, so that's Andy Farrell there ahead of the match. I just want to ask you, Birch, about your thoughts on the Ireland team. So we know that Keith Earls has a hamstring injury. He's going for a scan. The back three then is Hugh Cahill, obviously picks himself at the moment, but it's Mac Hansen is the big call, and Andrew Conway. In the centres, then he's gone for Bundy Aki. Robbie Henshaw again has a bit of an adductor injury. It's a bit niggle. He was available, but it was decided not to risk him. We know. So I guess, you know, maybe the eyebrows raised originally when you saw Bundy Aki and paired with Gary Ringrose. That negates that a little bit. Ian Henderson's short of fitness, obviously, as well. He's just back. So they've gone with Ty Byrne, who's the foreign player. And like, you know, take the bulk and size issue out of it. You know, you'd want him in your squad every time. But overall, your thoughts on the squad?
Yeah, look, I think it's it was always going to be very much based around that team that beat New Zealand, and the only changes are injury enforced or lack of match practice. I think Hansen's a big call. It's a credible story. You know, he was an electrician in Canberra, got to know Andy Friend's son through drinking in a bar, and it turned out they found out he had a granny from Cork, and he's come over here and he's been brilliant. And I mean, what a roller coaster for him. He's a left winger. They would have had to move Conway or Ballacloon to play out of position. Obviously, they've no left footer now, which is big for them. But Andy Farrell, I think, said a couple of weeks ago, he doesn't want his wingers to be too tidy. He wants them to be a little bit off the cuff, a little bit loose, and certainly Hansen is that. And look, James Lowe is that as well. They're obviously, James Lowe's a good left foot and he's a bigger man, but Hansen breaks a lot of tackles. He gets his hands free. He kind of goes searching for the ball off his wing. So I'm really excited to see him. Like, he's going in there on form, and it's a big call. I thought Ballacloon probably was going to get in, to be honest.
That was the talk, Bernard, wasn't that? Was the talk that people were expecting to see him involved in some way, shape, or form, if not in the 15, which a lot of people thought he should be in, that the match 23. So is it disappointing from him? How do you read that?
Well, I think, he's been passed out effectively. He was, if you remember, back last summer, before Mac Hansen even came to the country, he played in those summer internationals, did quite well. The last month, he's been brilliant for Ulster, and looks to become a tidied up areas of his game that maybe weren't as strong, particularly high ball contests, etc. So he's got passed out, but look, he is serious X factor, and he's a young player, so he's getting a game for Ulster tomorrow night, and I'm sure he'll see game time at some stage in the Six Nations. Apart from that, Ty Byrne, I mean, you're not losing anything with him, with Henderson, Bundy as well. Bundy, Robbie are very similar at the moment, so we're in a good place. We got some good young players: Ryan Baird, James Hume, obviously on the bench to come on, and it'll just be interesting to see if we can build on what was a good November, and if we can, because Wales, can we get around Wales, or can we get to the edge as easily as we did against the All Blacks? Probably not. Getting Jenkins, Sean will know. I mean, he's tightened up the defence. They're a lot more. It's more Sean Edwards type or Sean Holley type, and that's going to be a challenge for Ireland.
Okay, well, just on that then, a bit like Wales a year ago, Sean, we went from a very poor Six Nations campaign last year, albeit we ended the championship with a victory against England, which seemed to gloss over an awful lot of cracks that were kind of developing along. Again, summer test three is fine. Then we come into November, and it's just this really exciting brand of rugby, this offloading game, this direct attacking style that we hadn't seen from Andy Farrell or from Mike Catt, indeed, in the previous kind of year and a half or so. So what's your kind of view on what Ireland have done to kind of click all of a sudden? It seemed to be very immediate, this kind of dramatic improvement that we had.
Yeah, I did an article for a rugby magazine. They asked me to do Andy Farrell's Island. I mean, it hasn't been that long, is it? So I had to do a fair bit of digging and speaking and research. But a couple of things that I found was, one, he's definitely much more of a man manager, it would seem, than your likes of Joe Schmidt. He sort of gets it. He gets the lads a little bit. They tend to have long meetings in Ireland. Bernard will tell you they have long analysis meetings and briefings and so on. But that's because a lot of the guys have been through a schooling system, and they sit there and they listen. They get it. They're intellectual and they understand it. Couldn't do that with Welsh guys because they'd lose them. He'd lose them as Bernard would find out from the Dragons. So I mean, that's one thing. He probably gets that, and he's a great bloke, Andy Farrell, and they'll respond to that. That's the first thing. The second thing that I know from a coach and a tactical point of view is their speed of ball. Their first guys arriving to the ruck are so quick and destructive. It just creates such quick platform for Gibson Park and co. And if you look at Caelan Doris's try against the All Blacks, it enables the Ireland forwards to win the race around the corner, and that's all that happened in that one. The clear out from James Ryan for just prior to that try was just fantastic. If you could bottle that up as a coach and inject it into your front five or all your players, then you'd be a World Cup winning coach. So, that's one thing. And I see it with Leinster, that you just cannot regenerate your defence. Their speed of ball, away from the ruck, they're into position. People like Doris and Van der Fleer and Jack Conan coming at you. You never get time to reload and reset. So I think that's been the fundamental difference. And it seems to me that there is genuine competition for places. He's not afraid to pick a Mac Hansen. He's not afraid to say, well, Ian Henderson hasn't quite had enough game time. Tyburn is immense anyway. I'm not so sure Ireland have been quite in this sort of, I don't know, what is it, gold position, and they're ready to rock.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited about seeing them. That's why I've tipped them, because do you know what? They could win this game, and they could win it quite comfortably, and make 7-8 changes for the next game, and be stronger.
Yeah. How much of that quick delivery and I guess the directness of Ireland's attack that allows them to go from multi-phase possession is down to Jamison Gibson Park's delivery? And I say this in the context of we have Conor Murray on the bench, who went to the Lions tour last weekend. Maybe one or two people raised eyebrows that he was picked in the first place. Warren Gatland went out and played the rugby that we know. We won't talk about that now. But it does seem that this has coincided with the delivery at scrum half for Ireland. Conor Murray has been quite a kind of a slow deliverer of the ball. Even the way he approaches the game, it's quite methodical. A lot of it box kicking, a lot deliberately thought out plays and structured plays. Gibson Park just seems to have this whip about him that, dare I say, has been like the brilliant Welsh scrum halves of the last few years. And I include Gareth Davis and Thomas Williams in that.
Is that for me, Hugh? Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. I've always felt as great a player Conor Murray is, I've always felt it's a little bit on the slow side. And when he goes up a gear, wow, Ireland and Munster and the Lions play a different level. So I agree with you. Gibson Park is busier. I like Luke McGrath, for playing for Leinster. I think he's just as big. I watched Kieran Marmy and Caelan Braid for Conor. They're the same. They're busy. And it suits Ireland's style, particularly at the moment. So I'm not surprised that Gibson Park is playing. And when you have those athletes, and I include people like Andrew Porter, Ryan Baird, you can put them in that category, getting into position early. Again, Bernard will tell you as a coach, you want to win races. You want to win races in attack. You want to win races in defense, whether that's to the ball or to get into position so you have a better opportunity of breaking the line. And that's what Ireland are about at the moment. And that's why Jameson Gibson Park is in for me.
Yep. Birch, what's your view on Joey Carbery? And there's a method to my madness here, taking space on the bench. But he's played very little rugby in the last couple of months. And Jack Carty has been singled out for the form for some of the rugby he's been playing. There's a clear pecking order here that Andy Farrell has established. And unfortunately for Jack Carty, he is absolutely number 3 now, whether he likes it or not. Yeah,
he's number 3. But the method is around Joey is a very good fullback. If you're stuck, you can play him in the centre with James Hume or on the bench, or Hume on the bench beside him. I think he wants to have someone who could do that. And also, we're going to Paris the week after. If Joey's clearly number 2, he probably needs to get 20 minutes, as soon as possible of game time. The other alternative was obviously, Munster don't play this weekend, so he couldn't have sent him back anywhere. So he's getting him in there, and obviously he's been able to run. He's been able to run for the last 2.5 months. So his aerobic fitness will be good. And he probably just wants to get him up to speed quickly. But it's hard on Carty. But at least from Carty's point of view, it's a small thing. But at least he's back in the squad. So he's edged his way in to be number 3 again. Whereas in November he was out of it.
And listen, like Wayne Pivac is sitting there talking to Ellis Jenkins, to Basham, to Wayne right before the game. And obviously a couple of the boys from the Dragons. And they're physical lads, Bernard, and I've seen them a couple of times this season. They hit bloody hard, as does Ross Moriarty on the bench. I mean, Johnny Sexton, he's going to know he never shies away from it, but he's going to know he's in the game, right?
Oh, absolutely. But look, he wouldn't expect it any other way. He'd be disappointed if he didn't get it. And he plays flat to the line, and it'll be everyone have a shot at him, not just those back rowers. But if he's not playing flat, Ireland are going to be in trouble. And a lot of really good stuff comes from Sexton in terms of his ability to game manage. To his passing game is very strong, but he makes people engage the defense and engage themselves. So yeah, he's playing less games now, but the quality of his performances are outstanding. Yeah. And Wales, those back rows will want to get a hit on him. I think Ireland as well. I think we are less predictable than we were. I listened to a podcast George Ford did, and he was talking about, when they analyse Ireland, all you do is say, where's Sexton? That's where the ball is going. And it was very easy for them. And Johnny, I spoke to Johnny about it, and he said he felt, you could feel that when he played against England because there was just so much pressure on him. Whereas I think Ireland have got a bit smarter about being able to go back down the blind side, being able to play through the forwards. So we're not as one-dimensional as we were, and hopefully that'll protect him a little bit, but also buy him a bit more space.
I think as well, Bernard, you're absolutely right. Off first phase as well, you'll see Conway coming in to play first receiver, and that just allows Johnny to drop off to be behind the first set of forwards or pick up the first receiver in the next phase of play. Just takes the sting out of him a little bit, and I think that's part of the reason Mac Hansen's playing, because he wants him to come off his wing and get involved, and that just buys Johnny a little bit of time. It's very clever stuff. So I'm sure Steve Jones and Gethin Jenkins have looked at that, but it's getting to him. It is, and let's be fair, you can't just single out Johnny Sexton. There's so many threats in this Ireland team. But I agree with Bernard. I'd be looking for some people we haven't mentioned to step up. Our props have to step up, not just at scrum time, but they have to really move and get into position. Will Rowlands, there's still a question: is he an international quality Six Nations player? We haven't got the depth at the moment, so we need somebody to step up to become the next second row to play with Adam Beard. Will you please enter the building, whoever you are?
Absolutely. Any concerns of Josh Adams moving to the centre? I know George North has done it a couple of times, Sean. Any concerns that Josh Adams' delivery maybe to the outside? Because, you were saying that the pace of the Welsh attack, particularly in the back three and the outside backs, could cause Irish a lot of damage with Reece Salmon or whatever. Any concerns about your 13?
Yeah. Well, the biggest concern is, that we have to move one of our best wingers to 13. That's the biggest concern, that we don't. We pick 4 outside halves in our squad, name one of them captain. Don't see the logic in that one. And yet, we've got centres like Jonathan Davis and Owen Watkin who can't get in the starting lineup. So that's the biggest concern. I have no issue with Josh. I think that's he's a quality individual. It gives us a bit more pace on the outside, which is probably a bonus in defence. But that's thinking negatively. I think a lot of people in Wales are asking, off the autumn, how are Wales going to play with the ball? Are we going to kick the ball a lot? Are we going to see us getting flat to the line? Are we going to see us getting it into the hands of Josh Adams? Are we going to bring our wingers for more work? Towards the end of the last Six Nations, Lewis Rees-Zammit and Josh Adams were coming off their wing and really getting involved, whether it's distractions or coming in there as options for Dan Biggar. I'm hoping that'll be the case, because 2 of our best players are out wide, so we need to get our best players in the game, and I think that's what Wayne has done with his selection, is get your best players available to us on the park.
I need to ask you, obviously we've got 2 more games this weekend, Birch. England's Eddie Jones 3.0 isn't quite Eddie Jones 3.0 because it's been diluted somewhat by some of the players that he wanted to leave out and bring through. Injuries obviously have kind of hampered his cause somewhat. We're going to see this guy, Marcus Smith, though, go to Murrayfield against Scotland, the Scotland who beat England at Twickenham last year, and will be absolutely primed to do a number on this England side. We're going to find out an awful lot about how good Marcus Smith is, aren't we?
Yeah, and on the evidence so far, he looks very good. He's box office. I love watching him play. He's helped Harlequins win, 3 or 4 games at death. Massive amount of confidence and speed that I haven't seen from a 10 for a long time. And I think Eddie's going to give him his wheels, and I think the plan would be for Farrell to be alongside him, but obviously that's scuppered now with injury. That's a good game. It's going to be fascinating. Scotland obviously feel that they're in a really good place. England look all over the place, but I agree, Sean, Wales was very good coaches, but I think I'm fascinated by Eddie Jones' ability to reinvent himself and nearly set the tone for the way the game is going to be played. Sometimes he's a little bit ahead of the curve, and he knows he has to rebuild that team. He is rebuilding it, but how they play and how successful it is going to be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, Eddie Jones this week, Sean, and Scotland are overwhelming favourites, which is complete bullshit, but he knows exactly what he's doing. How do you see this game going?
I always feel with Eddie that they're the nation with the most people to pick from, and he never gets it right. you know, you almost like got too many sweets in the box. You know what I mean? So I thought Alex Dombrand would have played. You know, it's difficult to leave Sam Simmons.
That's a surprise, isn't it? Yeah, but like Dombrand was this big talking guy in the Premier League. He's had an unbelievable season. Everyone expects him to be in the team, and he leaves him out. It's typical Eddie, isn't it?
It is typical Eddie, you know. And am I convinced by their props? I've watched Cal Sinclair a lot at Bristol, and I'm still not convinced. You know, look. Has there ever been a better chance for Scotland to finish higher than fourth in the Six Nations? Because let's face it, we've been talking them up for a few years, and they never finish. If they finish fourth, they're cheering. It's a successful game because they've beaten England at Twickenham. Well, I get that, but you've got to now step up. You know, you've got all your best players ready. You've got a coaching team settled. You've got England at home first up. Let's see you turn up then. You've got to start walking the walk and not talking the talk. And to be fair to them, Edinburgh and Glasgow have gone really well. I've commentated a lot on them. They play an exciting brand of rugby. We know Gregor is going to play like that. So I agree with Bernard. This could be a humdinger. Are England just going to go up there and try and smash and grab? I doubt it. They pick Marcus Smith at 10. They're going to have a game. So this could be Harlem Globetrotter stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, it should be an absolute cracker. And just finally, I mean, look, France and Italy on Sunday, and we can be short and sweet about this one, Birch. Everyone expects France to do a number on Italy. Will that be the case? Have Italy any chance of putting up a fight, do you think?
They actually tend to play a little bit better against France than they do against some of the other teams, but no, short answer, no.
Okay, no, we'll keep it short and sweet. Gents, Sean, thank you so much. Birch, before we go, I just want to mention, obviously, a huge condolences to Tom Kiernan, his family and his friends. He passed away earlier today. Munster Rugby just put out a quick statement. The facts speak for themselves. For his has been a career without equal in the history of Irish rugby. Our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Tom Kiernan. I think everyone would echo that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, Sean, thank you so much. Enjoy the match this weekend. Very much appreciate your time. It always is a cracker when Wales come to town as well. Off the pitch in the bars, which will be absolutely packed, if not on the pitch. But listen, enjoy the championship, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
The RTE Rugby Podcast, sponsored by Canterbury. See the new Irish men and women's rugby jerseys at canterbury.com.